we've all really come together and collaborated and worked as a team like never before.
I miss seeing the patrons. I miss having them come in all the time.
It was definitely weird. Dark. We turned off the lights a little bit.
Trying to make sure that we're getting the needs of the community, but making it in the best way that they can access.
We are all going through stuff separately, but together. And remember that, and be kind to each other.
Hello, and thank you for joining us here tonight. I'm Kelly. I'm the Marketing and Development Coordinator at Fraser Public Library. Recently, I sat down with 5 of our staff members as today is the 1-year anniversary of the library's lockdown due to coronavirus. Our staff and the library face a lot of changes, and quite rapidly, I might add. And I wanted to see how this last year went for them. It wasn't always easy. We had many highs and many lows, but together we managed to pull through, and we're optimistic for what the future holds. The first question I asked every single staff member I interviewed was what the last year of their life here at the library looked like. So please enjoy what they had to say.
Oh, it has been a roller coaster. So when COVID first started, we were never quite sure what was going to happen the next day, let alone the next week, let alone the next month. So planning programming was like trying to throw multiple darts at a dartboard and just hoping something would stick. Because we didn't know what people wanted or needed or even how their lives were going, and all of our lives were totally upset, and everybody was trying to figure out how to work from home and do things safely and come in and actually, how do we process books? How do we do all of this stuff? So doing programming was very difficult, especially at the beginning, because we had no idea what to expect.
Well, it's been very different, of course, than what we're used to. I have noticed that when we are open inside, the amount of patrons are slower, especially the last few months. The curbside service hasn't been going as well as it has before. I miss seeing the patrons. I miss having them come in all the time. When they do come in, they're really happy about being here, and it's really nice to see the ones that come in all the time. I really enjoy that. That's what I missed, I think, more than anything this past year, is not being able to see them as much as before.
It's been different because I feel that I wasn't going to be able to help people at first. So I was a little worried, because that's one of the reasons why I do this job. And once I was able to help the first few people that ended up calling in, whether it be just doing an internet search for them because they didn't have a computer or whatever it was, I felt like I really was accomplishing something for them that they just did not have the tools to do or access to do it. So that felt really good. And that I stopped worrying after that, because I realized I was still helping people.
I mean, truthfully, I think it has been an experience like no other. I think I've had to adapt completely. But I think overall it's been a positive experience. I think we've all really come together and collaborated and worked as a team like never before. But I think it's been good overall.
I really look forward to the days that I can come in and actually interact with patrons and see people and smile, even if you can't see that behind the mask, and say, hi, how are you doing? How are you holding up? Oh, okay, you're looking for this book. I'm more than happy to help you find something. I really miss those interactions with people, because that's one of the reasons that I went into programming in the first place, was having those interactions and talking to people, and it's one of those fun things about programming. But yeah, I really look forward to the days that I can come in and actually talk to people. Oh, that's wonderful.
What was the last year like for me at work? Well, work entirely changed. It changed where the work was happening. Work sort of became 24/7 for me. There was no longer an off switch. It was all the time, everywhere. So it was tiring, but also less with people, which was in some ways even more tiring because you don't get that feedback that you would normally get. But on the other hand, it was exciting to be able to kind of change things up and do things. And it gave you a sense of being necessary. I don't know how to explain it more than that, but I felt like I had a real job to do. So, I guess.
The first team I sat down and talked with was our programming team. Admittedly, they might have faced the biggest struggle through coronavirus just due to the fact that last year, right away, their jobs were canceled. Kristen and Carly could no longer plan programs because we didn't know what we could safely manage at the library. Now, as the summer went on, we found plenty of new ways to accommodate our community safely right outside in our parking lot. However, when the winter came, we had to get very creative. And I really hope you enjoy hearing how the last year went with our programming team.
I was really only here for 6 months before COVID hit. Knowing what the community wants and needs is really hard because I only had about 6 months of getting to know the community before I had to basically guess. So that really has been, I think, the hardest part of this entire situation. I had teens that I was just starting to get to know, that we were really starting to get to know one another and have great conversations whenever they would pop into the library. I haven't seen them in a year because that was our whole interaction, was they would come in and we would talk and we would discuss things and they would tell me about their lives and we would commiserate and talk about what books they might want to read next and things like that. And it was a really cool way to get to know the teens in our community, and I just don't have that anymore. There's no way to do that with COVID. You can't have an open forum and just expect teens to show up because they're so zoomed out. They just don't want to be on this platform anymore. They've done it for a year and a little bit, and they just don't want to see it anymore. And I don't blame them. There are days when I get off of the Zoom and I'm like, oh, I can actually like watch something else. I can read a book, like physically read a book now. Oh, that's wonderful. You know, see something besides this small little space
Right.
in front of me.
It's a bummer because I work in the children's area and I miss having kiddos in there. That was my favorite part, is working with the kids and, you know, coloring with them and finding them a new book. I remember a specific experience. A mom came in. She had to study for her classes and her daughter had to study for her stuff. So I sat there with her studying, I don't even know, science? Like stuff I didn't even know, but this little girl was so smart and we studied. Like that was such a powerful interaction, and to lose all that, that was very difficult. And I think morale, once again, those curbside pickups become so important. To see faces that you haven't seen in months, it's nice, it's refreshing, and I think you familiarize yourself with the regulars even more than you did before. So
I basically just took the mentality of let's try something and see if it works. If it doesn't work, all right, it doesn't work. Cool, let's move forward and we learn something from it not working. Maybe we need to change what that is, or maybe we chose a bad time. Maybe no one wants that right now. Maybe people need something else. So, you know, the darts at a dartboard and out, yeah, that's pretty much what it was. It was just, let's try something, see if it sticks. You know, throw spaghetti at a wall sort of mentality. But I've learned more about video programming and doing things online than I ever thought I would ever know.
that's probably one of the biggest things I've had to adapt to. I've had to learn to be on camera and be very comfortable with it very fast. I did a lot of Facebook Live story times, which I'd never done before. Truthfully, I had never been on camera before in that way. I've never filmed myself more than I have in this last year. So I did Facebook Live story times. I did, summer reading had to be completely adapted to a virtual space. I did tutorial-esque videos for that, which is new. Programming wise, in terms of in-person, we've had to completely redo how we do everything.
Lows. Very low numbers in programming, and it's kind of disheartening to put a whole bunch of effort and work into this program that you think is going to be really cool and then not have anybody show up. And it may be purely because it was at a bad time, or maybe people aren't interested in this topic, but it is really disheartening because you don't know. Usually if you can talk to people or talk to patrons, you can have a better idea as to what's going on, but we don't have that right now. We have no way of knowing what our community needs other than to basically glean what little information we can from Facebook and other resources. So making programming tailored to the people is basically impossible right now.
But I think one of the biggest ways I've had to adapt is learning how to make personal connections like I did before in a traditional face-to-face manner, but do it digitally or do it virtually. So I think I realized how important those Facebook Lives are, those phone calls when I'm at the circulation desk, those curbside pickups are. It becomes so much more important to make those connections any way you can, really.
In planning, I'm going to, what I've been doing is most of the programming that we're going to hope to do in person, with always the caveat that we can do it virtual. So a lot of the things that we're going to do that's an in-person craft, we're going to make it so that we could potentially make that into kits and do a take and make sort of thing, and then post a video of how to do it, or have our presenter record something and then you watch the presenter and then they'll walk you through whatever it is. So I'm planning everything with the idea that we may have to go virtual anyway. So keeping in mind that while I'm asking, Animal Magic to come in, what are ways that we could potentially do something like that virtually? Well, we've talked to them in the past about doing virtual programming, and we came up with a plan last year. Last year didn't work out just due to everything that was going crazy, but this year we can actually implement that plan if we need to. So that's kind of the mentality for planning for the summer. Keeping our blended trackers with the paper tracker if you'd like it, but also doing Wandu Reader if you would prefer to do that. It just makes it easier for people to choose what works best for them. And in the future, we're probably going to keep Wandu Reader as a tracking program no matter what, because some people find it easier, especially if you have multiple kids in the family, to just log into your family account and just put all those books in at once. Understandable.
Now, the next team I sat down and spoke with were two of our librarians. Jackie, who has been here for 14 years, has never seen anything like this happening. Granted, none of us have. And Doug, who has only been here for about a year and a half, and only 6 months before coronavirus hit, not even able to get a full feel of a library through the years, was sent home as a librarian, and they were going to work from home. And we had no idea how we were going to make that work, how we can get them in front of the patrons and provide services that are much needed, especially for those who didn't have computers and needed help finding new jobs or finishing their schoolwork. We had to, again, get creative and create many new digital ways to communicate with our patrons and to provide them access to their library. So please enjoy what Jackie and Doug had to say about the last year.
It was definitely weird, dark, we turned off the lights a little bit. But it was nice to be able to go ahead and at least say hi and greet them when we took the books out curbside to them. So having that little contact and using the cleanest cart in Macomb County to deliver them, it was great.
Hard, because like I said earlier, there's a lot of patrons that, you know, with me being here as long as I have, I've got to know them, and it was really nice in the beginning to, or before, to have them come in and be happy and say hi, how you doing, and, you know, talk a little bit, and not having them be able to do that when we were closed was really hard. So the little bit that do come in that I do recognize, and even with their masks on, I'm very happy that they're here, and I'm looking forward to having the library open back to normal, whatever normal is, again, so that more will come in.
Working from home was a little difficult because it was, at the start, we really didn't have much to do and not many people were calling in, so it was more of like a monitoring than anything else, and it was, our contact with our patrons was very limited, but I just like the fact that I was there in case something happened, but I didn't have too much contact with people. So that's why when we opened up for curbside, I was excited.
I actually enjoyed it, other than the fact that we had no contact with staff or patrons other than with the staff on Zoom. It was different. I've worked at home before and I didn't like it at another job that I had. I didn't like it at all. I can't say that I was thrilled to death about staying at home, but it was nicer. I wanted to be more careful with my health, so in a way that worked out really well to start out.
I think that it worked really well. Our online library applications worked really well. I think that I began to realize that even though we have a lot of digital resources, how we might want to, if people started using them more, how we could really get some better access to some other things too, because while we have digital resources, I think that we could have used even more during that time.
Well, to be honest, we had 2 or 3 different things added that we hadn't ever done before. One, of course, was curbside service, which I really like, and I hope that we can maintain it. I hope it will still continue to be viable for the patrons. I also do like the online library card applications. I really like that. It makes it easier for a lot of people just to, if they can't come in, and it's even easier than doing it curbside. Curbside is a little discombobulated to say, but I really hope we can keep that up too on the website. That I really like that. I think as a whole, I think we did very well. Of course, I don't work with each of them all the time because our shifts differ, so I didn't hear directly if they had any complaints about anything. The protection that we had put up by Lorena was marvelous, and I think that made it go a lot better. I didn't have any complaints. It's just, again, nobody, no patrons and like that, but it took a little bit of getting used to, but overall I think we did well.
The last interview you're going to hear is from our director, Lorena. Lorena was our fearless leader throughout this entire last year. And it's a great way to learn and see how she was able to lead us even when she wasn't sure what was going to happen the next day, the next week, let alone the next month. We had so many dice up in the air that it was so hard to figure out what direction the library was going to go in. And she's going to get honest about what the future looks like for the library and if there were any concerns. So please enjoy my interview with Lorena.
I had to monitor like journals all the time. I was in meetings constantly to get some sort of idea of what was coming forward. I had to constantly look and see what new laws, or rules rather, less than laws, rules were coming out, and sometimes it took quick segues, like we would have to change what we were doing in a matter of 24 hours. That happened a lot. That was a little stressful. And so what I did is, looking at the best knowledge we had going forward, would try to make rules for our library itself according to what knowledge was coming out scientifically. And I also tried to keep my staff in the loop. So every time I was like, hey, I would like to do this, what do you think? Because one person can't see everything, so I tried to get as much as I could from other people as well. I believe the staff was looking at things like that as well, like how would I feel coming into the library? How would that make me feel, not just to work there, but how would I feel as a visitor? So I think that was good with our staff, but I think there were some staff that were also very hesitant when I tried to talk about reopening to some extent. There were some staff that outright didn't want to. So some of that took time to figure out and get everybody, what would it take to make you feel okay coming into work? And that was part of the process, which is why I tried to involve everybody. Well, we had a limited amount of staff that could come into the library. It was only one staff member at a time, usually just being here to take packages at the door. And we couldn't let people in, we couldn't do any of that. So first off, we had to keep it really low, just somebody to do the basic functions. The staff that was mostly at home, those of us who had to work from home, I had everything in the world to do because there were constant meetings, there was so many things, and some of the other staff, like people who worked on the website and making sure all of that was functioning so we could help people from home, they had lots of things to do. People doing programming from home had so much to do at home because that was stuff you could do from anywhere. The people who really, most of their job is in the library, what I tried to have them do was do any training that they had been not lacking exactly, but needed to do going forward. I'm like, let's get it all done right now. So I threw all sorts of training at those people as much as we could. The biggest adversity working through the last year, I mean, there's so many adversities working through the last year. One is we didn't know where budget was going. We didn't know how things were going to proceed. And that we also had to, in spite of not knowing how much money we were really going to have, because certain things you can't get if people aren't coming in the library. That's part of where we get some money from. But then we had to use what money we had to do things like buy PPE, get all the plexiglass for the various stations, and there were so many other things that we had to make sure we had going forward. It was like a constant battle of trying to make sure, and where to find stuff, because sometimes you just couldn't find it. So that was another adversity, and also just how to keep staff safe. I had never, as a library director, we knew we were going to be dealing with everything, including if toilets got stuck, and you never knew when you were going to have to clean something up. I never knew that I would have to figure out how to keep people safe and have life and death decisions on my hands in a way. That was something I never expected. I personally never felt that we wouldn't open back up. I just didn't know what form it would take. I knew we would open up somehow in some way. I just didn't know what. My goal was to keep us as available to our population, our community as we could be, because people were going through so many difficulties through all of this, monetarily and with jobs, with just stress of life. Like, how best could we serve them? And I knew that we I knew that we had a place in all of this, so I knew we'd open back up. I just didn't know how or when. I think in some ways, it has made our eyes more aware of more ways we can serve people, serve the population. And surprisingly, we were one of the few libraries that didn't have a huge amount of people go virtual. We still had a lot of people that wanted to do things in person, wanted to come in the library. A lot of other libraries had huge jumps in numbers for e-readers and e-books and things like that. We had some. It wasn't huge, but we had some. But in other ways, like our virtual programming took off like crazy. So it did open our eyes of different ways we can serve people, and it did make us want to go out into the community more as much as we could going forward. I feel that, I mean, we very much see that people still want to come in the library. It's never been a thing, so I don't think that changes that for us at all. It's just how do we go about expanding what we can do for people, and especially with so many of the things that are happening in our community and things like that, it just shows how much more we're needed as people try to get back on their feet and get back to work. That's the kind of stuff we're here for. I think one of the things that really happened with this is we banded together more as a group. I believe the bonds in the staff became a lot stronger, because while we weren't always able to be together, we were all united in trying to do something. It was something we felt strongly about, with something that we serve our community, and I really do. I need to give a lot of credit to my staff, because we would not have made it through. I would not have made it through if they hadn't been as dedicated as they were throughout this whole time. I mean, a lot of the great ideas we have now came from the staff that we have, and I think that's the one thing that this event brought everybody together, was something we could all work towards.
Thank you for joining us as the staff reflected back on the 1-year anniversary of our lockdown due to coronavirus. 2020 was very hard, as many of you can imagine, and I know some of the questions I asked staff were not easy to revisit. However, I asked them one final question at the end of each interview, and the question was how they see this last year impacting them for the future. And our staff was amazingly optimistic. It warmed my heart to hear that they are looking forward to our future, and that coronavirus made the library stronger. So please enjoy what they had to say, and thank you for joining us tonight, our 1-year anniversary of our coronavirus lockdown.
I think this past year has helped me realize how much I like working in the library, and how much I like working with people, and just being there to help. And I might only be a reference librarian, but I enjoy what I do very much, and when I'm able to help someone, it makes me feel special, and so I feel like a great sense of accomplishment from that. So whatever I can do to help, I'll be there.
I think definitely being more intentional, even more than I was before. Going out of my way to approaching every patron, approaching every kid who comes in here, making that personal connection, because we lost that for a long time. And I gave my all for programming before, but I think moving forward, doing that, and then 10 times more, putting in your all for the library, for the patrons, making everybody feel welcome, because that's what we're here to do. And I think big emphasis on that.
Programming moving forward is going to always be different. No matter what we do, we are going to be going to in-person, socially distant programming over the summer, hopefully. This is a big old hopefully, because we never know what's going to happen. So we're going to do a lot of stuff, hopefully outside. Hopefully the weather will cooperate with us this year. But that's going to be what we're going to stick with for the foreseeable future. But even going forward beyond that, some of the things that we're doing are probably going to stay virtual. Like Baby Chick Lap Sit, it's so much easier for a parent to tune in on Facebook Live with a small little one than it is for them to pack up the little one, bring them to the library, unpack the little one, participate in Baby Chick Lap Sit, then pack them up again, take them home, unpack. You know, it's trying to make sure that we're getting the needs of the community, but making it in the best way that they can access.
I want to say that I'm very grateful for the very considerate concern that our director, Lorena, had in setting up everything, making sure that we had protection, we were provided even though we didn't have patrons in. Our staff was really good about being careful with wearing masks, and you know, we took their temperature, and everybody just fell in and worked hard and wanted to stay safe, and with the protection that we had for us and our patrons, I think we did an awesome job. I'm really happy that I work here.
First off, we are going to get through this. We will make it through the other side. I mean, things are changing and getting better, question mark, every day. We just need to just hold in. And the biggest thing that I want to say is we have to remember to be kind to each other. We're all going through this together. Nobody's trying to get anybody else. We're all in this. And I mean, not only am I the director of the library, but I have my own life. You know, we are all going through stuff separately, but together. And remember that, and be kind to each other.